Waterloo International Children's Games recognition, and Darcy Drummond is coming up. Welcome, Darcy.
Good evening, Mayor Jaworski and members of council. We are here tonight to celebrate the achievements of the Waterloo delegation who represented the city at the International Children's Games in New Taipei. On behalf of the City of Waterloo, I would like to introduce you to the current president of the Kitchener-Waterloo ICG Board, Robbie Mulder. Robbie will recap the delegation's experience at the Games in New Taipei and the board's plan for the future.
Mayor Jaworski, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of the KW International Children's Games. The Games were founded in 1968 by Metod Klemek, a Slovenian sports instructor better known to us as the father of the Games. His aim was to promote peace and friendship through sport to the world's youth. In the past 50 years, the Summer Games have attracted over 45,000 participants, representing 450 cities from over 80 countries, from all 5 continents. The Games are considered to be the largest gathering of young people participating in sport in the world. In July 2016, the city of Kitchener-Waterloo sent 2 delegations consisting of Kitchener table tennis athletes and their coach, 10 boys basketball players and their coach, 8 girls basketball players and their coach, both from the KW Vipers, 4 swimmers and their coach from Roe, along with myself and Kathy Stillwell as the heads of delegation to represent our cities and our country. The Games were hosted by New Taipei, Taiwan. Our send-off was one to be remembered. We were fortunate to have Mayor Verbanovic, Waterloo City Councillor Angela Veith, and the Honourable Bartosz Chager, the Minister of Travel and Tourism. As volunteers, we invest our time to develop tomorrow's leaders through the provision of sport and recreation programs in the community. We do this with much pride and are rewarded knowing that our community participates on the world stage. As Canadians, we do have a responsibility to be leaders in the promotion of peace through sport all around the world. The next Summer Games are scheduled for July 2017 to be hosted by Kaunas, Lithuania. Planning is well underway to send both a Kitchener and Waterloo delegation comprising of 8 KW affiliate sports organizations. Once again, we hope to deliver that once-in-a-lifetime experience to our local athletes. In closing, I would like to thank the members of our board, the City of Waterloo and their staff members Jim Bowman and Darcy Drummond, who have provided assistance to this wonderful program. Special thanks to both Councillor Angela Veith and Councillor Brian Burke. Your attendance in New Taipei will assist with the true meaning of this incredible opportunity for our youth. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Carmen, one of our swimmers. She would like to share with you some of the experiences of the athletes in New Taipei.
To say our trip to Taiwan was amazing would be an understatement. It was, well, a once-in-a-lifetime experience, for me and many others. The bonding feeling isn't something you get just anywhere. You grew to know your teammates like your best friends. I hope I can continue to keep in contact with not only the Waterloo delegation, but the Kitchener delegation too. So I figured I'd give you a short rundown of our trip from the view of, well, me. We left Canada at like 1:30 a.m. early. I'll say the flight was long and hard, but not too bad. And I would like to say that we liked the extra time we got more for touring than for resting. We saw some incredible sights, being able to get to the 89th floor of Taipei 101, up a gondola ride to the top of a mountain, and a select few of us braved the stairs of Elephant Mountain. We got the chance to learn a bit about the history of Taiwan by going to a museum and a historical house. The next part of our Taiwan experience was the actual games part. We left our hostel Monday morning, and I'd like to thank Saturio and Shelley, who let us be our rowdy selves for 4 days in their wonderful place. When we got to the university, we met our student ambassadors, who were absolutely outstanding. The opening ceremonies were the following evening, giving us time to explore and meet other people from other countries, or, for my fellow swimmers and I, get our butts back in the pool because they had one available on campus. To keep it short, the opening ceremonies were awesome, beautifully done, and they had great performances. Next comes game time. I know I didn't get the chance to watch everyone compete in their sports, and not everyone got to see me swim, but I knew they were rooting for me to do my best and hopefully make best times. I did get the chance to watch part of the other Waterloo delegation, the girls' basketball team, in 2 of their games, and I can honestly say that they did amazing, but even though they lost their first game and didn't get the chance to move into higher positions. I think all the girls would agree with me in saying it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience and a chance to compete against other countries and make so many new friends, and that, like the 3 other swimmers and I, we'd like to thank our respective coaches for coming along and making it possible for us to do what we love. This includes the swim coach Alex Johnson, or AJ, the basketball coach Susan Robinson. One of the basketball girls said she found the experience amazing, and that although there were many language barriers and a wide array of countries, everyone seemed to be able to come together and be friends no matter what. And that's what the games are all about in the first place. Before I go, I'd like to specifically thank the Mayor of Waterloo, Dave Jaworski, and the councillors. A huge thank you goes out to the parents who helped us get there, and Robbie Mulder and Kathy Stillwell, who accompanied us and put up with our shenanigans for the full 10 days. I'd also like to thank the coaches, the ones from Canada and the ones from around the world, because without our coaches, who would we be?
Right. Thank you. I think it's my turn. And I just put a few notes on my BlackBerry so I could not forget what I was going to say. So I'd like to welcome everyone, all the athletes and the coaches and the heads of delegation and families too, and all your supporters tonight to council chambers. I never thought I would ever have the opportunity either to go to Taiwan, and I'm sure you were all thinking the same thing, but what a great opportunity. It's really hard to describe how wonderful it was, and to describe to people when I came back the whole experience. Besides, it was really, really hot. So, it was an honor for me to be able to attend the International Children's Games in New Taipei City in July. I want to congratulate all of you on your results and all your hard work and training. While I didn't get to see all the competitions, I was watching the results and rooting for all of you the whole time. And as we know, the competition is only a wee part of the experience. I know that you all made friends, and met friends from all over the world, and I hope that you will cherish the memories and the friendships for years to come. And I met a lot of people as well, where I was, the organization. I learned a lot about how the games work, and it's a great organization. So again, congratulations to all of you, and thank you for well representing Waterloo in New Taipei City. And I want to thank the heads of delegations again, parents, and all the behind-the-scenes organizers and volunteers. I know it's a lot of work to get these kind of events and athletes off the ground, so to speak. Again, and on behalf of Council and the citizens of Waterloo, congratulations to all of you, and thank you for representing us. And yes, maybe next year you'll be going again. Thanks.
For my days when I used to take my daughter's fastball team all around Southern Ontario and even to such hot spots as Toledo, it was always difficult to keep everything organized, a lot like herding cats. So to the organizers, good on you for bringing them all back. That's outstanding that you could pull that off. It was a remarkable place. I've spent some time in Asia, and I always find that fascinating, but New Taipei was different. But there are a couple things that really struck me. One was just how important it was to that city that all of these other people from other parts of the world were there, and how much they appreciated the fact that you were there. And I'm pretty sure that you experienced that as well. There was nothing that brought out more civic pride, in some cases, and national pride than their opportunity to show off their city to you. And you were spectacular ambassadors for us, and that's always a good thing. So that was one thing that really struck me, and just how important it was. And then when I started to reflect back on that as well, I thought, I am in support of nothing more than people going out and being able to have an experience. Young people like you to go 3/4 of the way around the world and compete in something that you love, I think is tremendously important for you as you go along. You'll always have this to hold on to. For the city, it was important as well. We met some very interesting people, some people at a garage startup that when we got there and said we were from Waterloo, they wanted to make sure it was the same Waterloo that had that university they'd heard so much about. And so it was remarkable to be able to travel with that kind of brand, and remarkable to be able to see the things. And I'm so glad that young people like you from around the world get the opportunity to go out and do that and to represent not only your city and your family, but yourselves in the way that you did. And you should be incredibly proud of that. And that was just my takeaway from it. So thank you very much for being the ambassadors that you were. And we do appreciate that, I think, a great deal. Are we going to do the certificates now?
We will.
So the mayor is, and I think you two are getting up, because they've given me the reading job. I know, I always get the reading job. Well, and you know, people have been nice enough to phonetically put the names here in some cases. That always comes in handy. However, I do offer this disclaimer. If I do happen to mispronounce a name, feel free to yell at me. We would like to hand out certificates to some of the athletes. We'll start with our swimming group. Manatsukiya. You can applaud. Usually you can't, but today you can.
I think we're going to do a group picture.
Carmen Reed. Matthew Burton. By the way, that shirt was a collector's item in Taipei. Anybody who could get their hands on a Mexican shirt or the giant sombrero was quite well regarded. Andrew Kuiper. We are going to switch over to basketball. Aliyah Mashiel. Look how hard these kids work. They don't even have, like, pants without holes in them. Really quite remarkable. Devanshi Singh. Malak Dahawi. Jordan Ham. Laura Barroso. Savannah Metis. Kennedy Robinson. And one member of the group couldn't be with us tonight, but we'll acknowledge her anyway. That is Sarah Hopkins couldn't be with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here they are.
Yeah, I gotta get one for the city. Oh, I don't need to be in the photo, gosh.
Are you sure? I can take
No,
it for you.
I'm
Are you
quite
sure?
sure,
Okay.
yes.
Certainly fun was had by all. It was great representation of our city internationally by those youth. Delegations none. Can I see somebody approve the minutes, please? Anyone want to move that motion? Councillor Burke, Councillor Veith, all those in favor? That would be all of us. And you're welcome to stay or enjoy more of the reception downstairs. You're welcome. No obligation to stay. More than welcome to, though. Reports of committees. We have 2 reports here, which I think we can move together, right? Councillor Henry, Councillor Freeman. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's all of us. Thank you. Consent motion. We have 1, 2, 3 items on it. Councillor Durrell, Councillor Veith. Oh, yeah,
Move
sorry.
with a quick
Councillor
comment.
Durrell. Yeah, please.
The one thing I wanted to point out with the drinking water quality management system was that we received 100% was received by our drinking water distribution system, which I just thought was something
Absolutely.
interesting to point out, and way to go to our water team.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Durrell. And you'll move it as well?
Oh,
I'm sure
yes,
you will.
please, I'll
Okay.
move it.
Moved by
Are we
Councillor
voting?
Durrell,
Yeah.
second by Councillor
Okay.
Veith. All those in favor of the consent motion? That would be all of us. Thank you. Staff reports. First up is the one on security policy, prepared by Kevin Lobsinger and Julie Scott. There's no presentation. Do I have questions for them? Questions on the security policy report? Seeing none, would anybody care to move it? Councillor Whaley, Councillor Freeman. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much. But wait, there's more, Julie. It's the Waterloo Economic Development Committee Terms of Reference update. There could be lots of questions. Do I have questions from council? Seeing none, Councillor Whaley would like to move it. Councillor Burke would like to second it. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you, Julie, for your time. Next up, the Kitchener-Waterloo Joint Service Initiatives Committee update. This time we do have a presentation by Mr. Brad Witzel. Welcome, Brad.
So, hello, Mayor Jaworski and members of council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to provide you with a brief overview on the Joint Services Initiative Committee work that we've been doing with the City of Kitchener. And just for information, the City of Kitchener will also be receiving a similar update report and presentation at their council meeting, happen simultaneously. So just first, a bit of background on the Joint Services Initiative Committee. So Kitchener and Waterloo have a long history of working together with the goal of providing residents in both cities with efficient municipal services where applicable. So the Joint Services Initiatives Committee was formed officially in 2006, and over the past year, over 65 projects and initiatives have been undertaken. It has been a few years, though, however, since Council has a formal update, so both cities thought now was a good time to bring forward an update report and presentation at this time. So initiatives are focused on 3 guiding principles: accessibility, programs are to be citizen-focused; affordability, with a focus on affording or delivering cost-effective services; and accountability, clearly identify areas, responsibilities, so lead and support agencies. The work of the Joint Services Initiatives Committee directly links to our 2015 to 2018 strategic plan under the Corporate Excellence Priority Area. So under the objective of continued improvements of customer service, reinvigorating the joint services initiatives with area municipalities was identified by Council as an area of focus. So as noted earlier, there's a long-standing history of working together. So here's a brief overview of some key high-profile projects that have been undertaken over the past 10 years. So the stormwater utility creation, the stormwater management program and funding review was jointly completed in 2009. This led to both cities implementing a stormwater utility in 2011. So this dedicated funding source provides a more sustainable and equitable method versus the historical practice of collecting funds through the property taxes. And this has since been recognized as a municipal best practices, with many municipalities across the province and the country shifting in this direction. And this coordination is ongoing as we're constantly in communication with Kitchener to see what they're doing on the stormwater utility front, most recently just collaborating on credit program. After-hours dispatch service. So through an agreement, the City of Kitchener after-hours calls and dispatch service also handles the City of Waterloo Public Works and Facility after-hours calls. So the Kitchener contact number is listed throughout our website to provide the number to who to call. And you will also get this via voicemail if you call the after-hours City of Waterloo number. So through this agreement, we're able to avoid duplication cost of having a system in both cities. And this is also an area that's been identified for potential expansion. In 2017, I'm looking to add other areas of City of Waterloo divisions that could benefit from this service. Oh, I'll go back there, sorry. Border streets. So the cities share 20 roads which form a seamless border. Reconstruction of these streets are planned to minimize disruption and reduce costs through collaboration where possible. So recent examples of this are the reconstruction of Essenallen and Severn, which was completed in 2012, and the ongoing reconstruction and reprofiling of Forsyth Drive and Aberdeen Road. So that's currently in the design stage with construction plan for 2017. And additionally, due to our common borders, land topography, and layout of the sanitary sewer systems, there are numerous existence of cross-border service agreements. And then lastly on this one, the Engage platform. So the Joint Services Initiative Committee also recognizes the merits of broader collaboration, so not just city to city, but including other cities and also the region and the township. And a great example of this is rebranding of our Open City Hall engagement tool in April 2016 as Engage Waterloo as part of a region-wide effort to create common platforms for citizen feedback. So this rebranding also included the launch of similar engagement tools in Kitchener, Cambridge, and the region, which have been very successful to date. So annually, the Joint Services Initiative Committee meets to prioritize initiatives for the upcoming year. So for the remainder of 2016 and into 2017, the following have been identified for collaboration. So expanding the after-hours dispatch service to municipal enforcement, coordinating efforts on external grant opportunities, including advocating and researching potential grants, continued coordinating efforts in regards to bringing two-way all-day go service from Toronto to Waterloo region, investigating a shared system of administrative penalties to handle minor offenses such as parking tickets and licensing, and collaborating on mental health awareness and training, effectively utilizing limited resources. So in terms of communications, both cities provide information on joint service initiatives through our website, and additionally joint service projects are clearly identified to the public with the logo seen on the screen, and the inherent benefits of working together are noted. So in summary, the report is here today for information. However, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the report or presentation at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Do we have questions? Councillor Whaley?
Well, that's an interesting presentation. We haven't heard about the joint initiatives for a while. And it seems to me that as we've been working on this, what we find out about our sister cities is that we have more in common than what we have differences. And so therefore joint initiatives seem to be becoming more and more a part of the way we do business both in Waterloo and in our sister city. But what's the end game in your opinion? Where is this all taking us in the future?
So through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Whaley, the one interesting thing is that we've tried to note in the report and even on the website is a lot of the initiatives, once they're kind of developed or put in place, they're ongoing. They'll go on for a number of years or forever. And it's all about utilizing those commonalities to kind of be efficient. So the end game is always looking for opportunities to collaborate with Kitchener to develop efficiencies. And with it being a focus area of the strat plan through council, those ongoing dialogue will continue, always looking for new and ways we haven't done before to leverage those efficiencies. So in terms of an end game, I don't really see one, unless we were directed to not work together, which doesn't really make sense due to that proximity and like you said, the very similar dynamics.
Further questions from council? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Brad. Yeah, I know that this is one of the earlier items in your file as in part of your new job, so thanks for making progress on it already, getting the update here, and my understanding from the communications team is the website, our website's already up to date with this information, and it's all available for our citizens to view and see that we're cooperating and working efficiently here at City of Kitchener and City of Waterloo. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Cassandra Pacey, Clean Water and Wastewater Fund candidates. And we do have a presentation this time as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Jaworski, members of council, CMT, and residents, thank you for having us here today to speak to you on this new opportunity. I'll present the first part of the presentation and turn it over to Todd. So the request before council tonight is the approval of the submission for 10 projects that we've recommended as staff, the approval of budgeted and unbudgeted funding, and authorization for the mayor and the clerk to sign the grant applications and contribution agreements for the Clean Water Wastewater Fund and any related documents. So what is Clean Water and Wastewater Fund? It's a grant program that is new and being offered by the federal and provincial governments, specifically targeting water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. Unlike many funding opportunities, this particular program does not have a maximum number of projects that can be submitted. There is a caveat, though, that each project can have no more than 50% of federal Clean Water and Wastewater Fund funding submitted, or 25% provincial funding. In addition, all projects must be incremental and be completed by March 31st, 2018. An interesting part to this particular program is that the province of Ontario has allowed for the stacking of Ontario community infrastructure funding, with the caveat again that no more than 50% of the project can be funded by the province. For the projects that were selected by staff and recommended before you today, there are 9 stormwater management projects, and they will be advanced from the 2019 to 2025 timeframe, therefore incremental, and there's the addition of the water leak detection program, which is a new unbudgeted opportunity. Each municipality received a maximum amount that they could apply for under this particular program. The City of Waterloo is eligible to apply for just over $3.9 million, $2.6 million from federal, and $1.3 million from the province. Of the 10 recommended projects, we will apply for, if council approves it, the maximum amount of eligible funding. In regards to the city funding, there is a request for council today to approve budgeted and unbudgeted funding. For the budgeted funding, there's $693,000 recommended to be approved from the Stormwater Management Reserve for the swim ponds, and that is recommended to be advanced from 2019. There is 2 components to that request. $154,000 is requested to be advanced to 2016 for the purpose of allowing for design and consulting on the retrofit projects. The balance of $594,000 is requested for advancement to 2017 and is subject to the approval of the grant applications by the province. In addition, staff are recommending the utilization of $400,000 of OSIF money, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Funds, to maximize the funding that we are eligible to apply for and take advantage of the stacking. For the unbudgeted amount requested funding is the $220,000 from the Water Reserve funding for the Water Leak Detection Program, and the Water Reserve can accommodate this additional request. For the projects that we have selected, as I noted before, there's 9 stormwater management ponds and there's the water leak detection system. There's 3 specific categories that the staff were looked at when they were selecting the projects. There is the aspect of incrementality, so all the projects have to be incremental, and by advancing the stormwater management projects, they're therefore incremental. And then the water leak detection program is a new project that will facilitate water services having the ability to monitor leaks and potentially address them before they become larger problems. The second aspect is the use of the asset management plan work that's been undertaken for the past year. Through that work, staff have identified that 85% of our stormwater management ponds have reached or exceeded their target year of dredging. So this is an excellent opportunity to utilize the additional funding before us and to utilize the asset management plan. The third key factor was the fact that is the requirement that all projects must be incremental. All of these projects are incremental and they will be completed by March 31st, 2018, which meets that requirement. In regards to stormwater management ponds, they are designed to accumulate sediment over time, which reduces their storage and water quality treatment capacity. Removing the sediment is necessary to restore that functionality. For the couple of pictures before you today, you'll see that the ponds are actually graded in colors from green all the way to red. The green indicates low sediment, and all the way up to red means there's higher levels of sediment. So these particular ponds, which are included in the recommended projects, have higher levels of sediment that need to be removed. In addition to removing sediment, retrofits typically involve scoped engineering redesign of certain features of a swim pond, such as forebays, inlets, or outlets. This is typically applicable to older ponds where the objective is to improve treatment capability or function to more closely align with current day standards. At this time, I'll turn the presentation to Todd.
Thanks, Cassandra. As mentioned, there's a third category to this grant opportunity, and that is a water leak detection system. This is also commonly referred to as an underground water management system. So specifically what we're looking for is a type of IoT system, or Internet of Things system, which is becoming much more popular. And it's designed to collect real-time data of our distribution system and relay that through a website to water services staff. Specifically, what we'd be looking for are certain attributes of the distribution system, such as pressure, temperature, acoustics, and vibrations. And again, this would all be real-time data that we would have access to. 'Cause it's phrased as a water leak detection system, and certainly that is one of the key objectives of moving forward with this type of project. However, there's a lot of benefit to some of the other attributes that we would be collecting data for. Just an example of that would be temperature. For us to have real-time access to temperature at various locations throughout the city, whether that is getting a little bit too low or a little bit too high, is something of great value to water services. So we have seen a couple presentations on these types of systems over the past couple of years. But when we started brainstorming certain projects for this grant and this grant opportunity, we felt that this was the right time to move in on something like this. So I took a picture of a cross-section of a hydrant just for interest's sake here, because that's typically where they would install their instrumentation, and that's where they collect the data and relay that through whatever communications platform the service provider offers. So anyway, I think at this point, we're at questions time, so Cassandra and myself couldn't answer any questions with regards to the projects that we've listed.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Todd, and thank you, Cassandra. First up is Councillor Durrell, then Councillor anybody.
A couple of questions. So the first is 60 hydrants. I imagine, what is that, 20% of the hydrants in Waterloo?
Well, we have 2,400 hydrants. You're
Right.
putting my math skills to the
Okay,
test right
that's
now.
cool. I will make you do that on the spot, although Cassandra probably could. So I think that's fantastic. Are they going to be placed in some of the older areas? Is that sort of the plan? Have you decided where they'll be placed?
Yeah, well, that is something we would determine, and most likely we'd be also looking to include that. This would have to go to competitive bid, and we would include that in any requirements that we have, to be worked out with water services staff as well.
So super high level right now. Okay, my other question was the stormwater ponds that you chose, like one's 50%, or a couple of them are 50% full of sediment and the other 60% full of sediment. And it just got me thinking, how old are these ponds? How long does it take to get them that way? And the work will we do, does that slow it down?
At this time, I'm actually going to refer, unless Todd has the answer, this to Dan de Toronto, because his team was the team that selected the projects, because they have a priority order of which stormwater management ponds will be retrofitted or cleaned out at specific times.
Sorry, could we just repeat the question for my...
Yeah, for sure. I was just curious, the ponds that have been chosen are either 50% full of sediment or 60% full of sediment, and it got me thinking, how old are these ponds? So that's my first question. The second question is, the work that we're doing here, have we progressed in fixing ponds to the point that we'll see it happen less? Just curious.
Okay, so two-part question through you, Mayor Jaworski. Probably a lot of the ponds are probably in the 30-year range, 30 to 40 maybe. in the core area of the city, there are not really any ponds, as evidenced by the fact that those areas are much older, right? So a lot of the ponds were put in as the subdivisions were developed in the last few decades. Certainly the technology has gotten better and the practice standard has gotten better, so the much newer ponds probably will perform better. A lot of the ones that are existing, they kind of are what they are at this point if we're just cleaning them out. But that's where some of these retrofits will come into play, as it's some of the design improvements that we hope to make on a few of these ponds would actually improve the function of the pond going forward. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Bang on. So that, I mean, my final point would just be, it looks like we're getting $900,000 worth of work, and we're actually getting $5.2 million worth of work, so this is great.
Further questions from council? If not, I think, was that your up, Councillor Henry?
Yeah,
Okay,
I guess I just question on from the waterfront in terms of what we might anticipate this allowing us to do that could save money down the road, right? So, like that's the question I have. The other comment I'd have, rising from Councillor Durrell's question, this came through when we were doing budgeting, that the optimal clean out, range for a swim pond, plus or minus, is around sort of every 10 years you should be doing something to it. But our budgeted levels as of a couple of years ago, 450 years was about how long it was taking us to get to them. So in terms of the gap that we need to close, that's the context. So this kind of work is really helpful for that as phase one infrastructure funding from the Fed. So with that, Todd, the question I left you with that I now can't remember how I phrased.
is how would this type of system, if I can, through you, Mayor Jarowski, how would this type of system potentially save money? And I'll say that, again, with the presentations that we've seen from different vendors, the primary objective is to detect a leak before it is significant enough that significant work has to be done. So, and in addition, significant water loss occurs. So that is the main objective of that type of system.
Thanks, and thank you, and it's great to see, in addition to the $4 million of savings, a smart city project in there as well with the leak detection. That's great. We've heard from a number of those organizations who've wanted to help us with that, and now we actually, funding pending, can move forward on that. So thank you very much. Now we need to approve it. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Henry, Councillor Durrell. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you. Next up, accessibility standards with BB Khan, and we're going to see a presentation as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Dave Jarowski, members of council, senior management team, and members of the residents. I'd like to present to you tonight a little bit of a background of what we have done for our accessibility standards. We're here tonight to ask that you approve these documents, which forms Appendix A to IPPW Report 2016-070. The accessibility standards is in keeping with the accessibility standards for Ontario with Disability Act regulation, and this document has received support from our local Grand River Advisory Accessibility Committee. I'd like to take a brief moment to provide a little bit of a background on the accessibility standard and its importance in development. The Accessibility for Ontario with Disability Act, which we refer as AODA, was enacted in 2005. And that was with the goal of making Ontario accessible for people with all disability by the year 2025. The AODA was followed by the Integrated Accessibility Standards, and the Accessibility Standards for Design of Public Spaces standards was developed as part of the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation. The purpose and the intent of the legislation is to make Ontario accessible for all persons with disability by developing, implementing, enforcing standards within a number of different ways, which include services, facilities, accommodation, building structures, and premises. Persons with disabilities are protected by both the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Ontario Human Rights Code. Accessibility turns legal rights into practical, everyday realities. Today, over 15% of Ontario population has a disability, including 40% of people over age 65. About 1.8 million people in Ontario have a disability. That is 1 in every 7 people. That's according to Stats Canada. The number of people with disabilities is increasing as the population ages. So in terms of the accessible standards, staff has prepared it with the intent to use it as a tool for implementation of accessible requirements when reviewing development application, and it is intended to provide designers with the technical information they need to design public spaces to meet the requirements of the accessible standard for design of public spaces. The standards for the built environment focuses on removing barriers in 2 areas, particularly building and public spaces. Development that are required to incorporate these regulations are those that are subject to Section 41 of the Planning Act, site plan control, and also through the building permit review process. The standard only applies to new construction where major changes are proposed within existing development and are applicable to both public and private developments, public sector organization, and large private sector non-for-profit organizations, and small private sector not-for-profit organization. What does the accessibility standard cover? It is a technical standard that's related to exterior path of travel. So looking at new and developed sidewalks, ramps, stairways, rest area, and depressed and accessible pedestrian areas. Recreational trails and beach route access. So it covers technical requirements for both new and redeveloped recreational trails and beach access, outdoor public use eating areas, requirements for new and redeveloped outdoor eating areas, including the provision of a percentage of accessible tables, ground surfaces, and eating areas. And outdoor play space includes general requirements for new and redeveloped outdoor space play areas and requirements to consult on local needs. For provision of accessible design feature in outdoor play areas. And accessible parking covers the technical requirements for the provision of new and redeveloped off-street and on-street accessible parking, including types of accessible spaces. Obtaining public services, and those include design elements related to indoor services such as new counters and areas where the public does access. As part of the site plan, the City of Waterloo site plan review process, plans are reviewed to ensure compliance with the AODA and further require that developers, owners enter into a registered site plan agreement. This places the obligation on the completion of development as per, including the implementation and the requirements for design of public spaces. Enforcement of non-compliance is enforceable on a complaint basis, and that's overseen by the ministry. So at this time, we are looking for your support. We do have co-chair Carrie Spears from GRAC, who's here tonight in support of the application, and also Lolita, our inclusion coordinator for the City of Kitchener and Waterloo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Anything to know? And while council thinks of that, I wanted to ask about school boards. If a new school has to be built, do they have to come to site plan? Do they have to comply with this, or is the school board separate from this standard?
Yes, the school boards are obligated through the ministry's requirement to conform to the DOPS requirement also.
Excellent.
So the schools and universities are also.
Okay, those will be
Yes.
the next. Mr. Rapp.
Just for a further point of clarification, it's through their own requirements and not through the municipal requirements. The schools do not go through, or are not required to go through our site plan approval process. They come in a voluntary fashion, but they're not required to.
So they would comply, but not to Waterloo's, but to more of a provincial type?
But to the province
Right.
themselves.
That's correct.
Great, thank you. Councillor Whaley.
Well, thank you for your presentation. You said that in the province of Ontario, we want to have the province accessible to all by 2025. First of all, do you think we're going to get there, BB? And secondly, what about, the obligation to take a building like this one, for example, or others who are not completely compliant, and push a plan forward when we can't afford it?
I believe that the province has given a mandate of time frame through you, Mayor Jaworski. The province has give a time frame for people to comply, mostly municipalities and public spaces, public sector. They also ask that if you're unable to, through your current building design, when there's the time for renovation, that you do comply. In terms of whether or not we're able to comply by 2025, I know there is an obligation for all municipalities to uphold the act and to ensure that through site plan control, these targets are met. We are seeing a lot of developers currently, even though that we have been implementing this through the past number of years, and we're having a lot of success where developers are implementing their accessible spaces and creating access to buildings. Unfortunately, site plan does not control the interior of the building, but we're seeing a lot of development happening outside on the surface, such as the spaces and ramps. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for what I think is a very readable document, a great
Thank
reference
you.
document, 60 pages, but you can flip to anything, find it in the table of contents, and you're there. So thank you very much for that. It looked like a great document. People who wish to move it? Councillor Veith, Councillor Freeman? All those in favor? It's all of us. Thank you very much for the work.
Welcome. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
if I
please.
could just make a,
Please, go ahead.
we've started to see some of the King Street streetscape. It's starting to come together in the design phase, and it's a beautiful streetscape, and it's taking in a lot of the things that I was reading in here, which is really exciting as well. So,
Awesome.
getting close
Great.
to finished design.
Thank you. Next up is, speaking of streetscape, it's the Northdale Streetscape Master Plan, Class Environmental Assessment Study, prepared by Mike Lupsa, and I think do we have a presentation or no presentation?
Yes, we do. We have a presentation
Okay.
with IBI is going to do the
Yeah.
presentation for us.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Jaworski, members of the council, CMT, residents. On behalf of the project team, I'm pleased to present tonight the findings of the Streetscape Master Plan and Municipal Class A for Northdale. IBI will be doing the presentation, and we'll take questions after the presentation. I'd like to introduce Don Drackley from IBI. He's the project manager for the EA component of the project, and Kelly Cobb. He's the project manager for the next phase, which is the detailed design, but he was part of the project team on the first phase as well. Before Don starts the presentation, I'd like to thank my project team. We had, for their efforts and the time committed to this project, we have a very diverse project team with staff from planning, engineering, operations, communications, and IBI, so from basically everywhere from the city and IBI. And I would also like to thank Councillor Henry for all his time and effort throughout this project. And Don?
over the presentation. If you think it's too high or too low.
No, that's good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, Don Drackley, I'm here again. Pleased to be here again, this time to talk about your Northdale neighborhood. Oh, too many choices. I'm going to start off by saying that in preparing the Streetscape Master Plan, we had the advantage of a substantial amount of planning work that the city has conducted over the last couple of years that all formed itself into your community improvement plan for the Northdale neighborhood. You approved that in 2012 and it came into effect in 2013, and it really established the groundwork for all the work that we've been working on in the public realm streetscape. Keeping in mind that public realm streetscape is essentially the road right-of-way that is the property of and the responsibility of the city of Waterloo. So that's the space that we are dealing with now, and how that space can be improved as the Northdale neighborhood evolves. The community improvement plan that was previously conducted, it establishes all the basic principles and concepts for the neighborhood. What we're dealing with here now are some of the details, starting to set the details. For example, how will that right-of-way space be used in terms of how much for hard roads, how much for hard sidewalks, how much for cycling space, how much for landscaping. That's what we've been working on this. So it's going to aid the decision-making process. It's also going to aid staff in how to implement this project over time. As I'll get to at the end of this presentation, we do have a staging plan on how to improve the public realm in Northdale, and it's dependent on a number of factors. The approach that we've taken to the streetscape and the public realm itself is somewhat different than might have been used, say, 10 years ago. Our objective has not been to accommodate the future of cars within this neighborhood. As you can see from this little sketch, this little picture in the top here, the Northdale neighborhood is already inundated with cars, either moving or parked or turning. We want to try to manage that. We want to try to reduce it. We want to try to expand the mobility opportunities in this neighborhood to cover all users. So really, we've been focusing in this study on mobility, shaping travel patterns, adjusting how streets work, how that public realm space works, so that it helps people make decisions about how to move through the neighborhood in something other than their private automobile. We had 3 public meetings as part of this process, and some of the things that the public told us, which I'll just quickly highlight here, things that they would like to see: multi-use trail, no medians, no landscape medians in the neighborhood because they're kind of wasted space, they're expensive to maintain and just look nice, but they don't do anything. Segregated bike lanes, Sharrow lanes on the low-volume, low-speed residential streets. Safety, of course, should be the prime consideration in planning for the public realm. There appears to be little support for major changes to one-way streets within Northdale. Some of the other things in terms of active transportation, specifically the public has said they would like to see some sort of bicycling facilities on Hickory Street, more pedestrian through connections, especially from the east to the west through Northdale towards the university area, more and better marked pedestrian crossings at intersections. And then with all of this, there was an understanding by many members of the public that there has to be consideration of impacts on water, sewer, and stormwater facilities within this neighborhood, some of them which are getting very old. They would like to see light pollution minimized in how the lighting system, both the street lighting and the pedestrian lighting, are designed, and that there should be an opportunity to see if we can bury as much hydro within the neighborhood as feasible. 3 key agencies that we dealt with in putting this plan together. Firstly, were, of course, Waterloo Collegiate Institute and the Waterloo District School Board, who are involved with planning right now for the future of the high school. They had suggested that Hickory Street within this neighborhood be made a one-way street with a multi-use trail. As you're going to see in a minute, we have responded to some of that. They have suggested that an active transportation corridor be provided throughout the neighborhood, especially, as I said, from the east section over to Phillips Street and to the university, and you will see that in the plan. They suggested closing Hazel Street between Columbia and Hickory so that a new transit hub could be created there. We have a little bit of a problem with that in terms of traffic impacts in the neighborhood. We're not completely eliminating it. We are saying that really that should really be dependent on what kind of plans come out from the high school and especially the school board and what the future of that site is. The Waterloo Fire and Rescue have required very clearly that whatever's done to those public realm streets, that they can accommodate all your fire vehicles, and that's been dealt with. And that they also have access from all directions to respond to events within the neighborhood. And Grand River Transit say they are supportive of Hazel Street from Hickory to Columbia being closed and becoming a transit-only facility, but of course that would certainly be convenient for Grand River Transit. One-way street on Hickory between Hazel and King Street is something that they would have to consider further because it would mean some significant changes to the bus route that they already have on within that area. So this is a concept, summary concept of what the active transportation facilities would be. I won't get into detail, it's a bit hard to read, but I will tell you that in addition to the existing bicycle lanes that are provided on the peripheral arterials, being Columbia, Phillip, and University, the internal part we are recommending include buffered and segregated bike lanes, and I'll be showing you in a minute where they would go. Multi-use trail along Hickory Street, and a shared auto bike lane facilities on the remainder of the low-speed residential streets. And then, as I said earlier, the university's idea and the school board's idea of creating an opportunity for the public to move east-west through this neighborhood and west-east between the university and say King Street is already being dealt with by city staff in how you are acquiring pathways through the neighborhood. The community plan calls for, in addition to the main streets, which are really not part of this exercise because two of them, for example, are regional roads, it really calls for 4 different types of new streets. These are streets that haven't really been seen before in the city of Waterloo. For example, Albert and Hazel are designated as mixed-use streets. That is, the land use along them will evolve over time to be a mixed use of residential and commercial development. A green street for Hickory down the middle is intended to be like a grand boulevard through this neighborhood and therefore treated and operate differently than the other streets. A Wernif is being proposed, and a Wernif would be the first time a Wernif has been developed in the city of Waterloo. Basically, a Wernif is a street that facilitates all kinds of movement without any barriers. No curbs, that sort of thing. I'll explain it more in a minute. And finally, the rest of the streets would primarily be local residential streets, but with right-of-way changes so that the amount of space available for streetscaping is maximized and the amount of space for hard asphalt and concrete is minimized. The only really major change that we are recommending to the whole public realm network within Northdale involves the section of Hickory Street between Hazel and Albert, which I said earlier we're recommending be changed to a one-way westbound street. 2 main reasons for that. Number one, we see that there is a fair amount of shortcutting traffic that is coming down Albert and going across Hickory to avoid traffic congestion on Columbia during peak periods, and that would be avoided if the traffic met a one-way section going the other way. The other problem is at the corner of Albert and Hickory, there isn't sufficient space to create a southbound left turn lane. Well, with a concept like this, with Hickory being one way out to Albert, there wouldn't be a requirement for that lane. So there's 2 advantages for those features. So I'm quickly going to show you then what these 4 different types of street cross-sections would look like. For the mixed-use streets, we actually have a little bit of a difference between Albert and Hazel. Albert, it carries more traffic. and Hazel is more of a local street. It doesn't continue, for example, south of the neighborhood. So for the Albert section, we still think it should be two-way. We think it should have segregated bike lanes, that is, bike lanes that are vertically separated from the rest of the road surface. That it should have pocket parking on alternative sides. Pocket parking means not parking everywhere along the street, but in strategic locations or pockets relating to the type of land use that is nearby, and that will evolve over time. And of course, sidewalks on both sides. Hazel, on the other hand, has lower speeds, lower volume, so it's still two-way, but we recommend that this include a marked buffered bike lane on both sides of the road. That allows us gives us a little bit more space back for some of the green streetscaping that you see here. It also gives us the opportunity with this intermittent parking to weave the travel lane section of Hazel, so you get these kind of features where you have narrow parts of landscaping and then wide and more intensive landscaping parts of landscaping along the street. And once again, sidewalks on both sides. Hickory Street is the green street, the one down the middle. We're recommending that it have intermittent, unmarked parking at strategic locations, that it have a multi-use trail along the entire north side of the street, that is, all the way from King to Phillip, and that's a 3-meter wide space for use by pedestrians and cyclists, and that on the south side it has a conventional sidewalk. Now that still means that if cyclists want to use the street and share it with the cars, they have the right to do that, but this is really trying to get the cyclists and the pedestrians to take a safer, more leisurely route along the sides of the street. I also have to stress here a very important condition. Whenever we talk about multi-use trails, they work great where we have a minimum of driveway conflicts along the route. And unfortunately, on a street such as, for example, Hickory or Albert, for example, right now, there's literally driveways every 50 or so meters down the street. That would have to change over time as parcels are combined and redeveloped, so that the number of these driveway conflict points is significantly reduced in order for this multi-use trail concept to work well in this setting. In the one-way section of Hickory between Hazel and Albert, we are really able to maximize the amount of public green space realm here. Only one lane of traffic, one lane of parking, a multi-use trail on the north side and a sidewalk on the south side, but an increase in the amount of remaining space available for landscaping and associated treatments. And then the residential streets are almost entirely all the rest of the streets. They all remain two-way with on-street parking left on one side. The streets would be shared auto and bike lane streets, and there would be sidewalks on both sides. The important point to make here is the geometry of the space for the cars, the parked cars and the moving cars, is about 6 meters compared to, say, around 9 meters for a typical residential street in a suburb. So this is a street where the vehicle moving component of it has really been brought down to the minimum in order to get this increase in public realm space. And then lastly, the new street, we'll call it, the Warriff Street, is for Larch. Larch is already a street that's been redeveloped. There's not much left in terms of disruption, so the time is coming when very shortly that street can be changed with the application of Warriff design principles. For example, where, as I said, all of the space is shared. That still doesn't mean you can use things like bollards, for example, to kind of control where motor vehicles go and where cyclists go. But the bottom line is there are no curbs, there's no sidewalk space, and there's no asphalt driving lane space. It's all one landscaped area. And that's for this one street. And perhaps if it works here like it's worked in other cities, it might be a treatment that you can look for in other parts of the city of Waterloo. To wrap up, in terms of public parking, which is an important component, there's roughly about 400 on-street parking stalls in this neighborhood, so there's a lot. And we would like to maintain and actually enhance that if at all possible. And so we put together a parking concept which, as I said, tries to maximize these intermittent parking areas and pocket parking areas to actually, if possible, increase that supply. There's also existing vegetation in the neighborhood, and we've created a tree management plan to manage how that will either be maintained or replaced. But on the other hand, there are no significant natural heritage features that we have identified within the neighborhood. The cost of all this, once all done, in 2016 dollars, would be approximately $24 million. In addition to that, city staff have identified an additional cost to maintain these new streets of about $60,000 a year, and they would apply mainly to streets like Albert and Hazel and the Larch, Werneth, because those are the streets that would have new facilities. It would require new maintenance equipment and new maintenance programs. And for example, snow removal in a Werneth that involves an open space used for different purposes would be much different than snow removal, say, on a downtown sidewalk. Now, on how to stage this, that's been based on 5 factors. Number 1, of course, is always to optimize the city's investment in whatever you're doing. Number 2 is what the state of the existing infrastructure is in any particular street. For example, does it have to be replaced? And if it is, if infrastructure, water, sewer, storm does have to be replaced, is it based on age and condition? So that'll be taken into consideration. Is there a need for upgrades, and what are the impact of those upgrades? And then finally, and perhaps in some ways most importantly, the status of the build-out of each street. How your current zoning bylaw provides for redevelopment on the street. How much of that is coming along rather than perhaps everything is remaining as it is today. So with that, and in conclusion, the top priority streets for stages 1, 2, and 3 would be Spruce Street and Hickory Street between Spruce and King, and the Larch Street Werneth opportunity. The second or intermediate stage of improvement would be the rest of Hickory over to Hazel Street, as well as Balsam Street. And in doing that, what you've created is a north-south corridor between the high school, the north campus of Wilfrid Laurier University, straight down and across University Avenue into the main campus of the university. And then the rest of the staging, we call it stages 7 to 11 if you base this all on an 11-year staging program. Those would be the latter stages, primarily based on the change in land use and the condition of the infrastructure. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that's our presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Don. Questions from council? Comments? Anything? Seeing none. My question would be on a Larch Street. So in terms of like one of the things we have to take into account is the build out of the street. And as you know, there's that one single property left fronting Larch Street that's in the center. Does that impact or prevent us from moving forward with the treatment or not?
We'd have to take a look at the impact of that one property you just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, but generally speaking, we believe that enough of the street has already been redeveloped that the Werneth opportunity is just about right.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And seeing no further questions, we'll go with our delegation. Welcome, Philip. Philip Marfisi from WLUSU. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Always good to see you, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Henry. All right, Mr. Mayor, members of council, fellow residents, thanks so much for having me tonight. I just wanted to give a few reflections on the Northdale Neighborhood Streetscape Master Plan from a student perspective. I'm hopefully going to keep it short. I think some of my presentation touches on some of the things that were already discussed, so I might skip through some of it. So the report being presented tonight has indicated that Spruce Street is being highly prioritized for near-term construction consideration since most of the street is already developed. So given the high population density and foot traffic of the street and the infrastructure needs it has, I think it makes sense for Spruce to be prioritized. And if the capital funds are available to install pedestrian scale lighting in particular on this street, I think the positive effects it would have on safety should be taken into consideration. In terms of potential medium-term improvements, the report being presented also mentions that the highly developed large street areas should be prioritized, as it was already mentioned. I think from a student perspective, it makes sense that we would support the concept of turning large into this style of street. It's conceivable with the recent opening of the Lazaridis school building that there's going to be much higher volumes of pedestrian traffic on the street. I think we all know as well that Northdale doesn't have an immense amount of green space. So I think there's an exciting potential here to have this street exist as a space that community members can congregate in, whether informally or through events run by local institutions. At the Public Information Center 3, there were some comments made on the ideas of having, public art installations there, or contests to design them, or different events that could take place there run by schools, the local high school, or other institutions. And I think given that lack of a green space, I think that the potential for that space to kind of bring people together to connect would be, to me, is very exciting. And just anecdotally, I had a chance to go to the Netherlands with my grandfather this past spring, and the concept of the Woner which is how it's pronounced there, kind of originated in the Netherlands, and seeing just how kind of like communities come together on those types of streets was pretty cool. So I think I already mentioned the things I was going to discuss in terms of the illustration that was already presented. In terms of potential, some of the medium-term improvements that were mentioned earlier, I think option 2, which was the preferred option in the report given, I think it maximizes the street's potential to be an active transportation corridor, especially as it can help drive pedestrian traffic to the Ion LRT stops, both that will be at the Seagram stop, as well as the stop at University of Waterloo. However, I think one of the most importants I can make on this, especially again from a safety perspective, is that if they go forward with putting this modal trail on Hickory Street, that they budget, or that you consider budgeting for pedestrian scale lighting along the entire pathway. I don't know if it's budgeted for now, and while in the report it is one of the most expensive options in terms of the proposed lighting summary, I think the value it would have for pedestrian safety, especially along a multi-use trail, it can't be understated in terms of multi-use trail if there's bicycles or there's pedestrians moving through the neighborhood at nighttime, especially in terms of pedestrians being able to navigate that on a safe level. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for having me. It's much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Philip, for representing the Students' Union. Questions for our delegate? Councillor Veith.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thanks for coming. Have you talked to staff? Are they aware of your comments before?
Yeah, through Mayor Jaworski, Councillor Veith. I have spoken with my project manager Mike a few times. He's been very helpful in terms of giving us information on this project. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor Henry and I have met with the delegate and just the concept of pedestrian scale lighting and how important it was. You think of the spur line trail, and here's what we're building as a Northdale area intended to be focused on pedestrians. So certainly what the Students' Union had to say was certainly rang true. So thank you.
And just, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say also thanks to Councillor Henry for meeting with us on several occasions to discuss this matter. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. I do not see further delegations on my list on this topic. So it's now open for council. Okay, moved by Councillor Henry with a question to be asked later, seconded by Councillor Veith. Please go ahead, Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. My team, I'm not sure who's best to take this. Reading through the full report, I see a notation on a subsequent report that that is pending at a later date with respect to some of the other costs around lighting and hydroburial. Could you give us a sense of timing thoughts when we might see that relative to the detailed design work that is coming next for, I think, the first priorities? I'd just like to see it in front of us, especially with our friends at the Student Union and closer than that in the media in front of us.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Henry. So the EA recommendation certainly includes the inclusion of pedestrian lighting throughout Northdale. At this time, the estimates that are in the document are very high level. They're preliminary, as is typical of an EA document. So we do need to do some work in refining those things. It is certainly our intention to include lighting and work to make that happen. So, as I said, some further analysis is required. We will be going into the design stage for the first street, Spruce Street, shortly to proceed through the spring. So we anticipate having some further information sort of in parallel with that, certainly in advance of awarding any sort of construction contract or finalizing design with that street. We would have further information on that for sure. But as I said, the EA recommendation is that pedestrian lighting should be included everywhere, and that's our intention.
Okay, and that's certainly what I was looking to make sure was included, because seeing any sort of note that suggested we needed a report too, so of course it's good to know that that's on the radar and is the full commitment under the EA for us to go ahead and do, because I think it is very important, building on those. So comment on the project as a whole. I've really appreciated staff's diligence on this and our consultants' time. I remember some early conversations I'd had with staff before this project commenced, and we agreed that a more innovative approach was required. Typically what we do for streets is to look at them one at a time, to sort of do the EA and then move into a detailed design and then build the thing, and then do it for the next street. But instead we decided to take a little bit more time up front, so we had one comprehensive and consistent plan for the entire neighborhood. So when we were consulting with folks, we could ask them once, as it turned out 3 times at the PICs, but in one go, so that we let them see the full board and we could see all of their comments and fit them together. And that's what's before us tonight, a master plan that really takes a holistic look at how the neighborhood functions today and how it needs to function in the future, with some very thoughtful commentary on how we get there from here. And I think the one note that I know Awike and back from Laurier is here observing is the whole Hazel Street question, and certainly there's some dialogue that we need to all have, particularly between the school board and the university on the future of WCI and WLU, and that will help us really link up the conversation about what needs to happen on Hazel and to some extent Hickory to make flow work very well for everybody and meet our broad objectives of fewer cars, more pedestrians, and more cyclists, but a traffic flow that doesn't blow anything up. And I think that's, I think we can get there, and it's good to see those flags. So I'm really pleased to see this first step being taken, and I'm looking forward to the design starting on Spruce and getting Spruce done in the near term, and that stub out to King, and then really building from there as the neighborhood builds. So these things are evolving together, and I want to echo what Phil was saying. We don't have much green space today in that neighborhood. The streetscape is an important component of our future green space in Northdale. It is going to be some of the first components that we start to see in terms of green canopy and really fulfilling that vision of a vibrant and exciting place to be, with a lot more connection to natural views and nature than we get today. So this is a great first step. So I appreciate everybody's work to get us here today.
Councillor Veith.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Philip mentioned something in his presentation that kind of tweaked or caught me, was about speed limits. So is there, and this is a pedestrian, nice, friendly area, so is there any way or any discussion about, I don't know, a specific speed limit for that neighborhood? Or has that been discussed? I don't know what it would be, but just comment.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in answer to that question, we have not specifically identified, for example, a speed management program for the neighborhood. One of the reasons is the concepts that we've created for these streets in some ways are self-regulating in terms of speed. We're making it difficult to speed in that neighborhood and almost impossible to speed on a Wernif, especially a short one like on Larch, where you simply could not get a motor vehicle revved up and going that fast before it has to slow down because it's coming to the next intersection. But that's the kind of subject that is very important to consider during the implementation stage, and I'm sure that it will be.
Excellent. Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the work on this. There are no formal and informal public meetings, no consideration of notice. Item 13, I'll ask Councillor Veith to pay attention because it's our notice of motion for fair pricing of e-books for public libraries. This is something that was discussed back in the springtime and then discussed by, presented some information by Waterloo Public Library Board showing how it's simply outrageous, the current pricing model. And since I'm sitting in the chair, I need somebody to move it. Moved by, we have to waive notice of motion.
Yeah.
Who would like to waive notice of motion? Well, we'll go with Councillor Durrell, Councillor Freeman, and then all those in favor, waiving it? Is everybody, okay. So maybe to Councillor Veith now on this motion.
Well, I'm confident that it'll pass around this table. It's very important. A lot of other communities have already signed off on this, and it'll be a very happy board on Wednesday night at the board meeting when if this is passed and I can report that. I'm sure the word will get out before then, but anyway, I'm hoping everybody will join in.
Yeah, and I didn't get a seconder on that, I don't believe. So Councillor Henry, or anybody who wants to. Questions? Councillor Henry.
I was simply going to say, on behalf of Insert Your Municipality, we in Waterloo are certainly concerned with the price of e-books and are happy to lend our specific name to this particular motion before us. Just thought that was a little touch to identify. And I think we meant to do this a lot earlier, but we'll bring it back at the next meeting sort of fell off until we got here. So we'll be glad to get this done.
We decided to save it till October 24th. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you. There's regional correspondence to read at your leisure. I also have this document to the clerk. When is that for? Okay. So under new business, who has some new business? Anybody have anything exciting, new business? Seeing none, I'll take my turn. The Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, OCBCC, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, and other labour and community partners around Ontario have announced that Wednesday, October 26th, is the 15th annual Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day, a day of recognition for the many who work providing early learning and childcare services in our community. This annual Awareness Day recognizes the education, skills, commitment and dedication of early childhood educators and childcare staff. Today we recognize the hard work, meaningful care, and continuous learning these educators provide every day. I'm sure you very much appreciate that. I do. Also from unfinished business, during Oktoberfest, we were given the special German Pioneers Award for the City of Waterloo and the support of German pioneers on our 150th anniversary of being incorporated as a community. So it's nice to know people are thinking of us in our 140th year. As well, I have never been to such a fashion show week all week. Today we had Kia and Leah Tiger, who did their 7th annual, I believe, Spooky Hollows, or Spooky Tours event. Again, a fundraiser for a friend, a very young friend who had cancer and is doing well. And they came by today with my shirt for the donation. Donations are still open. The event is completed, but it's available on GoFundMe for them. Also, for Zonta Club, our firefighters are doing a fundraiser in honor of Betty Thompson. Again, sewing shirts available at Fire Station Number 1, or you can email us and we'll get the contact information out to people. I was also they gave me a cape for this one. It was the Child Abuse Awareness Month in Ontario, and so we had a walk on last week in honor of that from Family and Children's Services. We had about 200 high school students join us along the walk, and it was very successful. Got to keep the purple cape. And finally, something we did with our students, our grade 5 students. Remember back June 26th is Waterloo Exercise Day? So we made up a couple of shirts for that day for me to show around as I was going around. And we put it on Instagram. And as we're biking later on in that afternoon, somebody stopped me on the Spurline Trail as we're going to meet with Premier Wynne in Kitchener. And they said, "Oh, excuse me, where did you get that shirt? I saw it on Instagram this morning." And I stopped and smiled. I said, "It's actually us. There was us who printed out, but there's no shirts available." So what we decided to do, since people in the community were interested, we created these Active Waterloo shirts. And if you tweeted your picture with you doing something active on our Spurline trails or any of our trails or anything active in Waterloo Yoga and that, you would get a shirt to the first 100 people. I'm not sure if there's shirts still available, but certainly tweeting out a picture of you doing something active is a good thing. And that's my fashion show for tonight. Also this week we have our culture team is having Amplify hosting our Culture Summit October 26th. I think registration is $25, but also includes seems to include dinner. So that's a good deal that can't be beat.
Are you forgetting?
What am I forgetting?
Aren't you involved in Hockey Helps the Homeless?
I am, but do you want to cover that one?
Yeah,
for me?
sure. That's
okay,
that's good. But no, that's enough because he's probably getting the free shirt, so that's okay. Hockey Helps the Homeless is again. It's up this year. Big goals ahead. That was a bit of a pun because I'll be announcing those goals on Thursday afternoon, or Friday afternoon, I guess. So the only job I can still really qualify for. And I know you're going to be there as well.
Absolutely.
At some point. Absolutely. And actually, it's interesting. There's about half dozen former old radio people who volunteered to come in and do some announcing. So that's kind of cool that we do actually go ahead and do that. It's a great cause and does some wonderful things in the community. It's hard to keep track with all the number of good things.
Awesome.
And the number of terrific shirts that the mayor gets.
Yes, that is right. Anything further? And if not, I'll look for somebody to enact some bylaws. Councillor Durrell. Councillor Whaley. Well, Whaley has his hand up too. Councillor Whaley. All those in favor? That's it. Adjournment. Councillor Whaley. Durrell. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you.